Let me just say for the record,
It's wrong.
my aunt's Facebook page has more credibility than you do. I could spend the rest of the day reading your quotes where you make allegations against people and you can't defend.
Kennedy is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks.
Senator Kane.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses here today. Professor Painter, on May 5th of this year, you put out a tweet. You said, I'm going to quote, "There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's the Supreme Court." Would you tell me which members of the Supreme Court you believe are bought?
I was particularly concerned at that point when I posted that tweet
I
about.
understand, but if you could, I've got really limited time, and I apologize for interrupting. Just tell me which members of the court you are bought.
I did not think that Justice Clarence Thomas should be failing to disclose his trips on a billionaire's
Do you think
yacht
he's
and
bought?
airplane.
Do you think he's
I
bought?
believe that there is grave risk.
Do you think he's bought?
I said there is grave risk.
Do you think he's bought?
To the confidence of the American people in our Supreme
Well, if you
Court.
don't think he's bought, why did you say it?
I said
Yes,
that
you said members of the Supreme Court are bought. You're here testifying as an expert for my Democratic friends, and you're saying the members of the Supreme Court are bought?
I said when the American people feel that way, when we have Supreme Court justices
feel that way?
on yachts and in planes of billionaires and not being disclosed.
Anybody besides Justice Thomas you think is bought on the Supreme Court?
I believe that the court needs to clean
Anybody
up
besides
its act.
Justice Thomas?
I'm not going to go through each
I mean, you
justice.
tweeted it.
I tweeted the way the American people
Did
feel.
you mean
the
it
way
when
I
you
feel.
tweeted it?
And I stand by that tweet. This Supreme Court of the United States
right.
needs to clean up its
Let me
act.
ask you a couple others here, because you've on September 17, 2020, you tweeted, "It looks like Putin's favorite senator could lose," referring to Senator Lindsey Graham. Could you tell me your evidence for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's favorite senator?
I don't recall that tweet and the story.
Well, I've got it. It's
tweeted
right
out.
here. It's right here.
I'm happy to look at the tweet, and I'm happy to write you, explain that. I don't know what that has to do with climate change.
Well,
Subject of
it
this
has to
hearing.
do with your credibility. Did
As
you
a-
say, what is your basis for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's? I mean, have you ever talked to President Putin?
I have not talked to President Putin, and I would be happy to go look at the tweet and look at the story that I tweeted out and what Senator Graham had said in that context. You know, this is something
you say all this stuff. For example, you're here as an expert for my Democratic friends, and you say all this stuff. You called on September 16, 2023, a professor at the University of Chicago, very distinguished professor, Brian Leiter. You called him a racist. Can you explain to me why you think he's a racist?
I remember a series of tweets with him. He's a Marxist who put out a number of statements attacking African Americans and women. And he also was raising money for someone who had called the police on a black student for sleeping in the common room, and now has a wokekkk.com website attacking
That's
me.
fair enough.
So
Fair
I
enough.
will just say one thing that I learned in high school debate, that when you have no argument, you simply change the subject.
All right. On October 15th of 2020, you said Lindsey Graham is soliciting cash payments in return for voting on a Supreme Court nomination. What evidence, that's a pretty bold statement, Professor. What evidence do you have for alleging that Senator Graham was taking cash in return for one of his votes?
I don't recall that specific tweet,
Here it
but
is,
I
right here.
do.
Here
I
it is.
do recall. And I
Do you think he was taking cash for one of his votes?
I have received campaign.
Do you think he was taking cash for one of his votes?
I'm answering your question, Senator. I have received solicitations from both political parties.
Do you think Lindsey Graham was taking
hearings
cash for
justice.
one of his votes? It's a simple question,
I have
Professor.
received cash, solicitations for cash on my email. And yes, from both political parties in connection with Supreme Court confirmation votes.
I'm out of
It's
time,
wrong.
but let me just say for the record,
It's wrong.
my aunt's Facebook page has more credibility than you do. I could spend the rest of the day reading your quotes where you make allegations against people and you can't defend them.
You've said nothing about climate change. You quoted everybody from a Marxist
Senator
to
Kane.
all sorts of other people. This has absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the hearing, Senator.
Senator Kane.
It began with a smile,
polite, disarming, the kind of courtesy that lasts just long enough to feel the tension before the storm. Senator John Kennedy leaned into the microphone, and the air in the hearing room changed. His southern cadence, measured but sharp, cut through the formalities like a blade honed on patience. He had come prepared, as always, not with vague talking points, but with receipts, tweets, words, the public record of a man who thought his opinions were beyond consequence. "Professor Painter," Kennedy began, his voice calm but electric with purpose, "on May 5th of this year, you tweeted, 'There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's the Supreme Court.'" The professor shifted uneasily in his seat. Kennedy didn't blink. "Would you tell me," he continued, "which members of the Supreme Court you believe are bought?" That single question cracked the room open like thunder. The witness hesitated, stumbled into explanations, half defenses wrapped in moral pretext. He invoked ethics, disclosure, billionaires, and yachts. But Kennedy wasn't asking for an essay. He wanted the truth. "Do you think Justice Thomas is bought?" he pressed. The witness dodged again. "Do you think any others are bought?" Silence. Then came the senator's refrain, direct, unrelenting. "You tweeted it." With those 3 words, Kennedy reminded the chamber and the watching nation that words have weight, that in the age of social media, accountability doesn't vanish in the scroll. Tweets are not whispers in the void. They are declarations. And when those declarations accuse the highest court in the land of corruption, they demand proof, not poetry. The professor wavered, caught between bravado and retreat. "The American people feel that way," he said, shifting blame to the faceless crowd of public sentiment. But Kennedy wasn't buying it. "You tweeted it," he repeated, his tone like a hammer finding the same spot on the anvil. It wasn't about political theater. It was about moral consistency. How could a man who smeared the Supreme Court in public now testify as an expert witness on matters of national importance? Kennedy turned another page. A new tweet. Another accusation. September 17th, 2020. "It looks like Putin's favorite senator could lose." The senator's eyes lifted. "You said that about Senator Lindsey Graham. What evidence do you have for saying that?" The professor stammered. He didn't remember. He would have to check. He wasn't sure what it had to do with the hearing. Kennedy's voice cut through. "It has to do with your credibility." And there it was, the heart of the moment. This was not about one tweet or one witness. It was about the erosion of integrity in public life, the ease with which ideology has replaced truth, and outrage has replaced reason. Kennedy's questions weren't crafted for sound bites. They were built to expose the rot of performative virtue, the kind that thrives online but withers under oath. He pressed further. Another tweet. Another accusation. "You called Professor Brian Leiter a racist," Kennedy said. "Can you explain to me why?" The professor, scrambling, invoked Marxism, accusations of sexism, fundraising for the wrong cause. But Kennedy's gaze didn't move. He wasn't hunting for gossip. He was defending a principle, that accusations made in the public square must meet the same standard as testimony sworn before the Senate. Truth. Then came the final blow. A tweet from October 15th, 2020. "Lindsey Graham is soliciting cash payments in return for voting on a Supreme Court nomination." Kennedy's tone hardened. "That's a bold statement, Professor. What evidence do you have?" Again, excuses. Again, evasion. The witness spoke of email solicitations, of both parties raising money. But Kennedy wasn't asking about politics. He was asking about honesty. Do you think Senator Graham was taking cash for one of his votes? The professor couldn't answer, wouldn't answer, because there was no answer that could redeem the recklessness of his words. Kennedy's time expired, but his final words landed like a verdict. My aunt's Facebook page has more credibility than you do. The chamber tensed, but no one could deny the truth in it. For years, social media has been weaponized to smear, to distort, to destroy reputations in 280 characters or less. And yet those who wield that weapon still demand to be called experts, activists, voices of conscience. Kennedy's rebuke wasn't personal, it was prophetic. He wasn't defending politicians. He was defending the principle that truth cannot coexist with hypocrisy. That public discourse cannot survive if those who shape it feel no duty to the facts. In that fiery exchange, Kennedy became something more than a senator. He became a voice of consequence, reminding America that free speech is sacred, but it is not free of responsibility, that when words are used to deceive, to slander, to inflame, they become the currency of chaos. The professor came to speak on climate change. He left exposed as a symbol of the deeper sickness in our politics, where moral certainty replaces intellectual honesty, and tweets masquerade as truth. Kennedy's final gaze lingered not on the witness, but on the audience. His message was clear without saying a word. This is what happens when rhetoric replaces reason, when activism replaces evidence, when arrogance replaces accountability. And as the gavel struck and the hearing moved on, the echo of that moment remained, not in the room, but in the conscience of a nation that must decide whether truth still matters. Because in a republic built on debate, integrity is the oxygen of freedom. And when that runs out, when experts lie, when media echoes their lies, when citizens stop caring who's telling the truth, democracy suffocates. John Kennedy's confrontation was not cruelty. It was correction. It was the reminder that words have consequences, that honor still matters, and that the truth, no matter how buried, will always have a voice. This is Liberty Congress of USA. Because the truth doesn't fear the fire, it forges through it. Subscribe now, stand with us, and never stop demanding the straight answers America deserves.